Any practice of business which would dominate the country by its own selfish interest is a destruction of equality of opportunity. Government and business, except in emergency, is also destruction of equal opportunity and the incarnation of tyranny through bureaucracy.
2020, I think if Trump got in, again, I think the Democrats would think he's illegitimate in the sense of like in 2016, but not in the same way that he stole it, right? Like this guy doesn't have a right to be president. It's kind of more their mindset. This year, I think if Biden wins, they will say it was stolen and all this lawfare. And if Trump wins, I think it'll be like, this is completely beyond the pale. He's a felon. These people don't believe in the same country we do. Like, we can't sit down and have a discussion anymore. So we are reaching a kind of political breaking point, which I am very in favor of, and I am very hopeful about.
The political parties are widening. There is more extreme people that are pushing to the borders, and there's very good reason for that. Technology being one of the reasons. Social media allows people to organize, influencers to push ideas and push philosophies to make people more extreme. And that's what we're witnessing. Now, Ray Dalio predicted that by this election, neither party is going to accept defeat. Now, I'm not sure if that's what's going to happen. If it is what's going to happen, then we will witness some type of reorganization of the U.S., but it's never happened peacefully. You don't see these things happen peacefully. Traditionally, they happen in a much more extreme way.
What were you referring to?
I'm just referring to this idea of a mass disbelief in the legitimacy of elections and government. Because it's real.
You said we can't sit down and talk to each other anymore.
Right. So meaning the point being that if you think this system is unsalvageable, then you come to my way of thinking, that there's no point in sitting down and talking because these talks aren't being done in good faith. My opponents don't value my life at all, or they see the world in ways that are so fundamentally opposed to my own that there's really no point in talking, because even best intentions, we're going to be talking past each other. And once you have enough of a population who thinks this, prohibition's a good example. If you have enough people who are like, this is just bullshit, and we don't have to talk about it, this just makes no sense, and I'm not for it, then people just ignore. Enough of the population ignores the law and does what they decide is the right thing to do. And then it gets harder and harder to maintain this sort of, from my view, illegitimate nation state.
Imagine a whole group of people no longer trusting elections. I mean, that number is already picking up. I know specifically a lot of my family members, a lot of my friends, they no longer believe in elections, which is funny because I never believed in elections, but it's coming to a point where that idea is becoming more mainstream. And what happens when people no longer believe that these institutions are credible? How does that look?
It's just a backdoor way of stealing the assets. Some people say, well, they'll just steal the interest. It's about $3 billion a year, so there's about $6 billion of interest piled up. So there are different things in play. We'll see what they actually do at the G7 meeting, but they're all the same in the sense that they involve stealing these Russian assets. Now, it doesn't mean that the next day the U.S. Treasury market collapses. There are, forecasts like that. Some people get a little hyperbolic. It doesn't mean that. I mean, the Treasury, one phone call to Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan and tell them to buy U.S. Treasury notes, and they will. The banks will do what they're told. So, but here's where the system could collapse. First of all, Putin would retaliate. There are well over $300 billion of Western assets in Russia. BP, Chevron, Shell, major U.S. oil companies, Starbucks, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, you name it. And they haven't, a lot of those businesses have kind of pretended to get out of Russia, but the assets are still there. Franchises are still there. Russia has not expropriated them, but they could. They could take all those, and they will. Putin has said he will. The thing about Putin is he doesn't bluff. He thinks very carefully about what he says. And when he says something, he'll do it, and he has. So if the U.S. steals the Russian treasuries, Putin will expropriate Western oil and energy and natural gas assets and just give it to Rosneft or Gazprom, which are the major Russian energy companies. It's estimated that it's estimated that there are more Western assets in Russia than there are Russian treasury bonds in the West. So Putin could actually make a profit on this whole thing.
This is happening on the domestic front, but it's also happening on the geopolitical front. Think about all the countries that are watching what the Western leaders are doing. And the Western leaders are contemplating to auctioning off Russia's assets or simply selling the interest of Russian assets. Now, when you have a dollar, you have a treasury. This is a contract. And when one party defaults on their side of the contract, why would anyone want to do business with the entity that signed the contract that's walking away from a contract? This is confidence being lost on the global stage. So we have two parallels. We have the domestic front and we have the geopolitical front, all seeing the same thing: confidence being destroyed, trust being destroyed.
Where are these assets? There's only about 5 billion of the 300 in U.S. banks, and those can be stolen very easily. But over 200 billion are in Euroclear. Euroclear is the largest clearing, settlement, and custody organization in Europe. And it has over $40 trillion of total assets, stocks, bonds, other types of securities, etc. But it has these 200 billion of the 300 billion of Russian assets, U.S. Treasury securities, are in Euroclear. Now, if you seize those, Euroclear has offices around the world. They have offices in Bahrain, UAE, Hong Kong, Singapore, a rep office in Beijing, etc. Russia could sue Euroclear in any one of those offices. And just take Hong Kong, for example. Hong Kong is an interesting case. It's under the thumb of the communist Chinese, but it kind of walks and talks like a Western legal system. And they have lawyers and courts and all that. So Russian lawyers show up in Hong Kong, sue Euroclear for 300 billion or more, with damages, etc., and get a judgment in favor of Russia. Russia can now run around the world and seize Euroclear assets that belong to anybody to recover that judgment. You could throw a monkey wrench into the entire global clearance and settlement system by disrupting Euroclear, which is probably second only to DTCC in terms of settlement and clearance. So this is an example of the stupidity of U.S. officials. Janet Yellen doesn't understand any of this. Her deputy, Wally Adeyemo, doesn't understand it. But the real danger is not that the treasury market collapses the next day. That could happen over time. It's that Russia retaliates, gets a judgment, and freezes the entire Western clearance and settlement system.
Euroclear is the second largest custodian of stocks as well as bonds and other financial instruments. And it's the European Union, every citizen, all of their financial instruments are custody with Euroclear. And Euroclear is assets and liabilities. Think of all financial institutions as a ledger of assets and liabilities. So if Russia sued Euroclear and won, and they took back their assets, now there's a mismatch between assets and liabilities, and this would be a hole in a ship that the ECB or the Fed would plug, which would cause even more inflation, more problems, because they would have to print money to bail out Euroclear, and pretty much they would be bailing out the amount that Russia was sanctioned for in the first place.
Technology that has this general ledger and a source of truth. You've solved two big IT problems, right? You solved the source of truth and then the timing in which that truth is updated. And so we looked at it and said, okay, this is going to drive ultimately atomic settlement. And the fact that you can have the money transact at the same time, and you can have the trust validating who the two parties are, you're going to take out a huge number of costs in that. And so, we're in a business where we're constantly being pressured to drive down the costs of the delivery of what we do. And I looked at this, and we as a firm sort of said, this is going to be the future there.
Truth is what financial instruments are supposed to have. If you have a mechanism that doesn't allow people to default on contracts, it doesn't allow people to break contracts, this is what the digital world is offering, what the blockchain world is offering society. And at the same time, you're seeing these traditional entities break contracts. You're seeing them default on contracts at a nation state level. This is happening very quickly. And when confidence is lost in the traditional system, there's very few outlets it can go. It can go the gold route, but it's not as sophisticated as you may think, because there's still room for banks, there's still room for financial institutions, still room for governments to sanction other people's gold and start wars over the gold that's sanctioned. Right, so this is a better design than the old systems that we've had.
That when Bitcoin was created, and I don't know if they were sort of intentionally quiet about this or if I just missed where they basically said, PS government, this is how we take your power away.
Yes.
But by creating Bitcoin, as I learned about it, I was like, wait, hold on. Like, this is going to strip the government of a ton of its power.
Yes.
So and this is obviously why I thought you might know Balaji. So Balaji's whole thing is, okay, once you take money out of the hands of the government, now people really can begin to organize themselves along different lines. And he said that everybody is trapped in this box of thinking that the lines that are going to be drawn are going to be geographic. And he said, in a world where money can travel at the speed of light instantly, in a world where communication can happen at the speed of light instantly, people can live anywhere and they can organize themselves not along geographic states, but along network community, even if they're not together, states. And that people will vote and live lives according to laws, according to their group. Now,
decentralization is paramount. If you look at human civilization, the great things have happened from the collective. The collective brings something great through decentralization. And for the first time in history, we have communication that's instantaneous and borderless. Now we have value that's instantaneous and borderless. So we're going to see things emerge that we've never seen before that really allow the true human spirit to excel in every front. The large institutions are beginning to break down. We're seeing this happen with money, but you're also seeing this with things like healthcare. And social media plays a big part in this. People are pointing out the stupidity in large institutions, in governments. It's only a matter of time before something different happens. Decentralized technologies are going to excel, but before they excel, there's going to be transitionary periods. We're not going to see governments just vanish overnight. There's going to be transitions. We're going to see the big banks have one last go at this. We're going to see governments have one last go at this. All these different institutions, all these behemoth corporations, they're going to fight back. And let's face it, there's a lot of power behind these institutions. Eventually that breaks down. Eventually all this comes to fruition. But in my mind, there's going to be a gradient before that happens. This is why I believe that companies like Ripple, as well as other companies that are targeting these larger use cases with behemoths, will see success.
So we really try to keep, up to date what's happening in the market, make sure that, whether we are participating and supporting different initiatives where possible, we do our own experimentations. And you're absolutely right? So we talked with Pega and with Ryan on tokenized assets and CBDCs. And
now the head of Swift just said that they asked Pega from Ripple for their feedback on the tokenization element of Swift's new platform, as well as the CBDC side of their new platform. So Swift is evolving over the years. It used to be a neutral public good. However, the U.S. has dominated Swift and forced Swift to carry out their bidding by sanctioning countries and kicking them off of Swift and really weaponizing the Swift platform. So now that this technology exists, any country can really create their own cross-border payments platform, but you still need the network effects. And Swift already has the network effects, and they're leaning on not only Citibank, but Ripple for their tokenization as well as their CBDC platform. Swift is important because they have the network effects, but also they're connected into countries' payment systems that normally most public chains will not have access to unless they're specifically given access to the payments platform. So Swift being connected to all these platforms means that at one point, this will be a seamless way of bringing money from people or businesses into the crypto world. And they're leaning on Pega from Ripple to get feedback on how to do this.
Doing a lot of experimentation in both kind of areas as the market, has identified those as key next steps of what the next way into interoperability. And so if you look at tokenization, we started off last year looking at how we can be the single point person hooking up tokenized platforms to different payment platforms. And now we're working with a group of banks who are actually doing some experiments to see if they can use their existing Swift infrastructure to instruct the value of tokenized assets across multiple private and public blockchains.
Swift is working with a group of banks, and they're issuing assets. They're going to travel across private as well as public blockchains. Now, you've probably seen the news that Chainlink partnered with Swift, and that's important because Chainlink is uncorruptible data feed. So if you have a stock in the New York Stock Exchange and it's priced at $50, and on a public chain, the stock is issued again, well, there can't be a discrepancy in price between the stock that's issued on the public chain and the stock in the New York Stock Exchange. So those prices need to be exactly the same at all times, at all given times.
I think the key takeaway is that we're not looking at a single asset future or a single chain future. The future is going to be a multi-asset, multi-chain future. And what you use will depend on the use case, right? And the key is going to be interoperability. You need to be able to move assets across chains, right? So a good example is, the Ripple stablecoin will be issued on the XRP ledger, but on Ethereum as well. So that allows you to use, the speed, the efficiency, the low cost of the XRP ledger, bridge that with the native smart contract capabilities of Ethereum. And that allows you more utility, right? So I think it just comes down to use cases. For some use cases, CBDCs will make the most sense. For some use cases, stablecoins will make the most sense. And when it comes to an interoperable and, cross-border aspect, we feel that, some assets like XRP will also make sense.
So you're not just insisting on XRPs, but rather, make it compatible with ETH.
It's about the interoperability.
Wow.
I certainly understand the frustration of XRP holders and Ripple pivoting from one strategy to the next, but that does not change matters that XRP does a very unique job in bridging currencies that are illiquid, while G7 currencies, the bridge is the US dollar. So having a stable coin that bridges G7 currencies and having XRP in a pool together, an AMM pool, makes it seamless between both currencies. The Ripple stablecoin and XRP are complementary, and this expands the use case of instant settlement.
Stablecoins do, and crypto assets more general, is make that process more efficient, right? The transparency, the immutability of the blockchain means that you can effect those transfers much faster and for fractions of traditional rails, right? So we primarily see that, if you look at Asia Pacific, the diaspora over here, there's a lot of remittances between, intra-Asia. So within Asia itself, people sending from Singapore to the Philippines, for example, Singapore to Thailand, but also global, right? From Europe to Thailand, from the US to the Philippines. We see that the utility of stablecoins makes these remittances a lot more efficient and makes them faster.
Okay.
A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you enjoyed content like this, please consider joining my Patreon or my Ghost site, dmjr.ghost.io.